A plant can collapse in less than 72 hours even when it's being watered regularly. And in many cases, that watering is the reason it fails. Most gardeners read soft leaves and dry-looking soil as dehydration, so they add more water. But what's happening below the surface often tells a different story. Roots don't just absorb water. They require oxygen to maintain cellular respiration. When soil stays saturated, oxygen levels drop within hours, and the roots begin to lose function before any visible damage appears. What looks like a thirsty plant is often a plant that can't breathe. The first breakdown isn't in the leaves, it's in the root system's ability to move nutrients upward. And by the time yellowing shows, that process has already been failing for at least a day. The part most people misread is what happens next, because the instinct to fix the plant is usually what accelerates the damage. In most cases, the first visible signal is subtle. The leaves lose firmness. They don't immediately turn yellow. They soften, slightly fold, and begin to hang. For many gardeners, that visual cue leads to a predictable response. The plant looks weak, the soil surface appears dry, and the conclusion feels obvious. It needs more water. That response is often what accelerates the decline. What's misleading is that surface dryness does not reflect conditions deeper in the root zone. In compact or poorly aerated soil, moisture can remain trapped below while the top layer dries out quickly. So the plant receives additional water before the previous saturation has cleared. Over time, this creates a pattern, frequent watering into an already oxygen-depleted environment. Roots rely on oxygen to maintain cellular respiration. When air pockets in the soil are filled with water, oxygen diffusion drops sharply. Within hours, the root zone can shift into a hypoxic state. At that point, roots don't immediately rot, but they begin to lose efficiency. Nutrient uptake slows. Energy production declines. The system weakens before it fails. From the outside, the plant still appears thirsty. Leaves soften further, sometimes curl slightly, and may begin to discolor. This reinforces the original assumption, leading to even more watering. But the underlying issue isn't water deficiency, it's oxygen deprivation. And this is where the cycle becomes difficult to recognize. The more the plant struggles, the more it is given the exact condition that caused the problem in the first place. By the time a plant shows visible decline, the primary failure has already occurred below the surface. Leaves are not the starting point, they are the indicator. What appears above ground is a delayed response to a breakdown that begins in the root system. Roots are metabolically active tissue. They require a constant supply of oxygen to generate ATP through cellular respiration. This energy drives ion transport, water uptake, and the movement of nutrients like nitrogen and potassium into the vascular system. When oxygen availability drops, that entire process slows down within hours. In saturated soil, oxygen diffusion is severely limited. Air-filled pore spaces become waterlogged, and the root zone transitions into a low-oxygen environment. Under these conditions, root cells shift from efficient aerobic respiration to far less effective anaerobic pathways. Energy production declines sharply. The roots are still present, but they are no longer functioning at full capacity. As this state persists, cell membranes weaken. The roots lose their ability to regulate water and nutrient flow. Opportunistic pathogens, particularly fungal organisms that thrive in wet, low-oxygen conditions, begin to colonize stressed tissue. This is the early stage of root decay, and it often develops before any visible rot is obvious to the eye. What follows is not immediate collapse, but transport failure. The plant can no longer move water upward or distribute nutrients effectively. Nitrogen mobility becomes inconsistent. Potassium regulation weakens. Chlorophyll production begins to decline. These internal disruptions take time to surface visually. Typically, the first observable changes in the leaves appear 24 to 72 hours after root function has already been compromised. By then, the damage is not just developing, it is already in progress. At this stage, most plants don't need more input, they need interruption. The system they're in is no longer supporting root function, and continuing to water or feed into that environment only extends the failure. The first correction is not additive. It's physical. When a plant continues to wilt despite regular watering, the typical response is to adjust frequency or add nutrients. But if the root zone is already oxygen deprived, those actions don't reach a functional system. The roots are present, but their ability to absorb and transport has already declined. The more effective response begins by removing the plant from that environment entirely. Lift the plant out of the pot and expose the root system. This immediately stops prolonged saturation and allows oxygen to reach the tissue. At this point, the difference between functional and compromised roots becomes easier to observe. Healthy roots tend to remain firm and light in color. Damaged roots often appear darker, softer, and may separate under slight pressure. The next step is controlled exposure. Instead of placing the plant back into soil immediately, the root system is left in open air for a defined period, typically 6 to 12 hours. This is not to dry the plant completely, but to interrupt the conditions that allowed early decay to develop. As excess moisture evaporates, oxygen becomes available again at the root surface. This shift alone can slow microbial activity and stabilize weakened tissue. What matters here is not complete recovery in that moment, but restoring the conditions that make recovery possible. After this interval, the plant is returned to a growing medium, but not the same one. The original soil has already demonstrated poor aeration or drainage. Reintroducing the plant into that environment often leads to the same outcome. Instead, the root system is placed into a looser structure with better air exchange, allowing oxygen and water to balance rather than compete. One additional detail changes the outcome significantly. Water is not applied immediately after replanting. Even though the plant appears weak, immediate watering can reintroduce the same low oxygen conditions the roots were just removed from. Allowing a short delay, often around 24 hours, gives the root surface time to stabilize before rehydration begins. This sequence, removal, exposure, replanting, delayed watering, does not act as a quick fix. It acts as a reset. And in many cases, what appears to be a dying plant is simply a root system that has been held in the wrong environment for too long. Once the root system has been exposed, another pattern often becomes clear. Not all roots fail at the same time. Some remain firm and functional, while others begin to darken, soften, and lose structural integrity. From the outside, this difference is easy to miss. Inside the root zone, it determines whether recovery is possible. Most people leave the root mass untouched, assuming any cutting will cause additional stress. That assumption seems reasonable, but in a partially compromised system, it often allows the problem to spread. Damaged roots do not simply stop working. As tissue breaks down, it becomes a site for microbial activity, particularly in conditions that were previously saturated and low in oxygen. These areas can continue to deteriorate even after the plant has been removed from wet soil. Left in place, they interfere with the surrounding healthy tissue and slow the overall recovery process. The correction is selective removal. After identifying roots that are soft, discolored, or easily separated, those sections are trimmed back to firm, intact tissue. The goal is not to reduce the root system aggressively, but to isolate functional structure from non-functional material. Clean cuts minimize further damage and prevent decay from progressing upward. This action introduces a controlled form of stress, but plants are adapted to respond to it. When damaged areas are removed, the plant reallocates resources toward producing new root tips. These new growth points are typically more efficient at absorbing water and nutrients than older, weakened tissue. What appears to be harm is, in this case, a way to restore function. The important distinction is timing. Pruning is done after the root system has been allowed to dry slightly, not while it is still saturated. In a wet state, tissue is more fragile and more prone to tearing rather than clean separation. A short drying period improves precision and reduces unintended damage. This step does not create immediate visible change above ground. Leaves may remain soft, and overall structure may not improve right away. But internally, it shifts the system from gradual decline to controlled recovery. In many cases, the difference between a plant that stabilizes and one that continues to fail is not how much is added, but what is removed. After the root system has been stabilized, the next failure point is often the environment it returns to. Many plants decline not because of a single mistake, but because they are placed back into the same conditions that caused the problem. Most growers reuse the original soil, assuming the issue was watering frequency. But in many cases, the structure of the soil itself is what limits recovery. A common pattern is soil that holds water but does not exchange air efficiently. It may appear loose when dry, yet once saturated, it compacts and retains moisture for extended periods. In these conditions, even careful watering can recreate the same low-oxygen environment that led to root stress in the first place. The correction is not adjusting how much water is added, it's changing how the soil behaves. A functional growing medium maintains a balance between moisture retention and airspace. This balance depends on structure. Larger particles create pathways for oxygen movement, while finer components retain water. When that structure collapses, through compaction, repeated saturation, or organic breakdown, oxygen availability drops even if watering is reduced. Replacing the soil resets that balance. A more aerated mix allows excess water to drain while preserving enough moisture for uptake. It also restores oxygen diffusion to the root surface, which is essential for sustained recovery. Without that exchange, even healthy roots cannot maintain function. There is also a biological component. Soil is not inert. It contains microbial communities that influence nutrient availability and root health. In poorly aerated conditions, microbial balance shifts toward organisms that tolerate low oxygen, including those associated with decay. Changing the soil interrupts that environment and gives the plant a more stable biological context to recover in. What this reveals is a broader pattern. Plants do not respond only to what is added. They respond to the conditions that determine whether those inputs can be used. If the environment restricts oxygen, limits drainage, or disrupts microbial balance, additional care does not translate into improved health. Recovery depends less on increasing effort and more on correcting the system the plant is placed in. Even after the root system is exposed, trimmed, and replanted into better soil, recovery is not guaranteed. In many cases, the process fails not because the steps were wrong, but because the sequence, timing, or conditions reintroduce the original problem. One of the most common failures happens immediately after replanting. The plant appears weak, so it is watered right away. This response feels necessary, but it often recreates the same low-oxygen environment the roots were just removed from. Freshly exposed roots, especially those that have been trimmed, require a short stabilization period. Immediate saturation can reduce oxygen availability again before the tissue has recovered its ability to regulate water uptake. Another mistake is overcorrecting during pruning. When roots are damaged, the instinct is to remove as much of the affected area as possible, but excessive pruning reduces the plant's capacity to absorb water and nutrients during recovery. What matters is selective removal, isolating non-functional tissue while preserving as much healthy structure as possible. Removing too much shifts the plant from controlled stress into structural deficiency. There is also a pattern related to soil choice. A plant may be moved into new soil, but if that medium still holds excess water or compacts easily, the same conditions return. This is especially common with mixes that appear loose when dry but collapse under repeated watering. The visual texture of soil is not always a reliable indicator of how it behaves under saturation. Timing creates another point of failure. Watering too frequently in the first few days prevents the root zone from re-establishing oxygen balance. Even if the volume of water is reduced, repeated application can maintain a consistently damp environment. During early recovery, spacing between watering events is often more important than the amount applied. There is also a less obvious issue: misreading short-term signals. After the reset process, the plant does not immediately return to full function. Leaves may remain soft for 24 to 48 hours, and overall structure may not improve right away. This is often interpreted as continued decline, prompting additional intervention: more water, more nutrients, or further disturbance. In reality, the system is stabilizing internally before visible recovery appears. The pattern across these failures is consistent. The plant is not harmed by lack of care. It is harmed by conditions that prevent recovery from taking hold. When those conditions are reintroduced too early, even correct actions lose their effect. Most care routines are built around the idea that plants improve when more is added: more water, more nutrients, more attention. But plant function is not driven by volume of input. It is constrained by conditions that determine whether those inputs can be used. A plant can sit in nutrient-rich soil and still decline if the root zone cannot support respiration. It can be watered consistently and still show signs of dehydration if transport pathways are impaired. What appears to be a shortage is often a restriction. The root zone operates as a balanced system. Water occupies pore space. Air occupies pore space. When one dominates, the other is displaced. Oxygen diffusion depends on those air-filled spaces remaining open. When they collapse, through saturation or compaction, root metabolism slows, regardless of how much resource is available. This is why increasing input often fails. Adding more water to a low-oxygen environment does not improve hydration. Adding nutrients to a compromised root system does not increase uptake. The limiting factor is not supply. It is the plant's ability to process that supply. Recovery begins when that limitation is removed. When oxygen access is restored, roots regain metabolic function. When structure improves, water and air can coexist in balance. When microbial conditions stabilize, nutrient availability becomes more consistent. These changes do not require additional inputs. They require corrected conditions. What this shifts is the way problems are interpreted. Instead of asking what the plant needs more of, the more accurate question is what is preventing the plant from using what it already has. That distinction changes both diagnosis and response. What appears above ground is rarely where the problem begins. By the time leaves soften, discolor, or collapse, the underlying limitation has already been developing in the root zone. The plant is not failing randomly. It is responding to conditions that restrict its ability to function. In many cases, the issue is not a lack of care. It is a mismatch between what the plant is given and what the environment allows it to use. Water is added, but oxygen is displaced. Nutrients are present, but transport has already slowed. The visible symptoms suggest deficiency, but the mechanism is restriction. That is why adding more often makes the situation worse. Recovery does not begin with increasing input. It begins with restoring the conditions that make function possible: oxygen access, structural balance in the soil, and a root system that can operate without stress. Once those are in place, the plant does not need to be pushed back to health. It resumes normal processes on its own. What looks like a dying plant is often a root system that has been unable to operate under the conditions it was placed in. Change those conditions, and the outcome changes with them. The next time a plant begins to weaken, the first visible signal will likely look the same: soft leaves, slight drooping, slower growth. What changes is how that signal is interpreted. Instead of responding immediately with more water or nutrients, the more reliable approach is to pause and assess conditions below the surface. Check how long the soil retains moisture. Observe whether the container allows proper drainage. Consider how frequently the root zone is staying saturated rather than how often it appears dry. Small differences in these conditions accumulate quickly. A soil that remains wet an extra 12 to 24 hours can shift oxygen availability enough to affect root function. Repeated over a few cycles, that pattern leads to the same early-stage stress that eventually becomes visible decline. By the time symptoms appear, the process is already underway. What prevents that progression is not a different product or a more complex routine. It is earlier recognition of the limitation. When root conditions are stable, when water, air, and structure remain in balance, most plants maintain themselves with minimal intervention. When that balance shifts, no amount of additional input compensates for it. The difference is not in how much is done. It is in understanding when not to act and why.